I'm Connie Baxter Marlow, and I'm a descendant of 5 of the Mayflower Pilgrims who came across from England in the 1600s on this little ship. We're putting together a little documentary that begins with their ideas and vision of freedom. In the evolving consciousness of humanity, there's been a thread of choice, of living life according to your own individual choice, a self-determining way of living in community that allows an individual to flower, allows an individual to bring his gift to the community through his own personal choice. And that thread of this evolutionary process began for this country, and for humanity, since we are the evolving democracy. This thread started in Scrooby, England in the early 1600s. The Mayflower Pilgrims in England weren't known as the Mayflower Pilgrims. They were known originally as Puritans. They wanted to purify the Church of England. People realized that there was no way they were going to purify the Church of England, that they would have to separate from the Church of England. And they set about creating a group of people who committed treason, essentially, against King James. King James was an absolute monarch who wanted absolute obedience, and they said, "I don't think so, King James." The Bible had been translated into English. It was on their table, and they wanted to gather together with their friends and discuss the scriptures, discuss the information that was in the Bible. And they gathered together and created this group of separatists. This group of separatists met on a regular basis. They were persecuted, they were harried, they were spied upon, and to the point that they were no longer comfortable in their own land. They sold their worldly possessions, and they gathered up their children, and they attempted twice to escape from England. They were betrayed and sent back home and put in jail. But since these people were Cambridge-educated principal players in their community, they didn't know what to do with them in the jails. So they turned them out of the jails, and a year or so later they made another attempt to escape from England and were successful and went to Holland, where they lived for 12 years. The people decided they didn't want their children to become Dutch, and they set out for a new world where they could establish a nation that was based upon freedom of conscience, freedom to choose. So they set sail from Plymouth, England, 50 of these people with another 50 what's called adventurers or strangers, and they set sail across the ocean. It took 60 days. When the Mayflower arrived in Provincetown Harbor, they realized, the people there on the ship realized that they were not in Virginia, for which they had a patent from King James. They were, in fact, much farther north, and there was talk of mutiny on the ship. So with the talk of mutiny, of everyone being every man for himself, when they set foot on this soil, the people pulled everyone together, and they sat down in the hold of the Mayflower, and they drafted a document, the Mayflower Compact, which the essence of this document is that they agreed to pull themselves together into a civil body politic and enact and create equal and just laws that would serve the common good. They also agreed that they would elect and create offices and officers to enact these laws, and that they would swear their obedience to these offices and officers. So right here you have, in its essence, democracy, an agreement by a community to live by common consent. And this is what our founding documents of freedom, the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the spirit of America, is based on these principles. These pilgrims, once they landed here, put those principles to work, and within a few months, upon their first meeting with Massasoit, the great chief of the Wampanoag Indians, sat down and drafted yet another document, a peace treaty, a 6-point peace treaty between the Wampanoags and the Pilgrims, that was to last for 50 years. They lived in brotherhood and friendship with the Wampanoags for a generation. I have a little book here called Good News from New England, and this was written by Edward Winslow, who was a principal player with the Pilgrims. And at one point, he went to the Wampanoag Indians. Massasoit was very ill. The chief of the Wampanoags was dying, and Edward Winslow went to see Massasoit and brought him a life-saving remedy. And upon his departure from this experience, one of the heads of the Wampanoags asked him how he dared come forth into Indian country the way he did, just two of them. And he responded, and I wanted to read, he answered, "Where was true love, there was no fear, and my heart was so upright towards them that for mine own part I was fearless to come amongst them." There was such a feeling of love that these pilgrims held for humanity and for each other and for the native people. It's something that we at this time have little understanding of, and it will behoove us to come to understand this founding nature of these Mayflower Pilgrims and their relationship with the Wampanoag people. The principles that drove these people ultimately became the founding principles of our country. Benjamin Franklin's first assignment was to go to Albany, New York, and create a treaty with the Iroquois nations. In Albany, he discovered that the Iroquois had, in fact, a system of government that had been in place for 500 years that was based on democratic principles. And he took from these Iroquois people, he picked up these principles and brought them to the Constitutional Convention and incorporated them in our Constitution. It was the coming together of the high ideals of the Mayflower Pilgrims and the Founding Fathers with the principles of democracy found in the Iroquois Confederacy that created our great Constitution. What are we going to do with these principles?
The Great Seal of the United States, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Annuit coeptus, Providence has favored our undertakings. Novus ordo seclorum, a new order of the ages. The Great Seal, the shield, made of 13 red and white stripes, represents the several states all joined in unity. The colors in the shield are those of the flag. White signifies purity and innocence, red, hardiness and valor, blue, perseverance and justice. The olive branch and 13 arrows denote the power of peace and war. Over the head of the eagle, which appears above the shield, a glory, or breaking through the cloud, surrounds 13 stars, forming a constellation. The constellation denotes a new state, taking its place and rank among other sovereign powers. The shield is borne on the breast of an American eagle without any other supporters, to denote that the United States of America ought to rely on their own virtue. Reverse. The pyramid signifies strength and duration. The eye over it and the motto allude to many signal interpositions of Providence in favor of the American cause. The date underneath is that of the Declaration of Independence, and the words under it signify the beginning of the new American era, which commences from that date. The Great Seal was adopted by the Continental Congress June 20th, 1782. Great Seal Description, Charles Thompson, June 20th, 1782.